Welcome to Politics Done Right on KPFT. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Give me a call at 713-526-5738. That is 713-526-KPFT. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. I tell you what, we have two great women in here that is doing what we always told or tell people to do. And that is when something goes wrong in this town, when something goes wrong in your town, when something goes wrong anywhere, where corporations are taking advantage of you, where corporations are taking advantage of government, where government is taking advantage of you, you have to make your presence known, and you have to do what? You've got to protest. You have to do all of that. But before we get with these women, I have to say, Don, how are you doing today?
I'm doing.
Don.
Yeah, what's up?
Can you be a little bit more excited for once?
I'm very excited.
Okay, good. All right. So that's how you show it, right? Look, how was your week, my friend?
It was a week.
Okay, we are going. I don't know.
Yeah. It was a week. We had a great 4th of July. A lot of fun, and now I gotta take a phone call. So
okay. You know, I can't change the Wi-Fi right this minute, but here's the deal, folks. We're going to have a great show for you today. So let me tell you what it's actually called. The show today is called The Corporate Purchase of All Aspects of Our Educational Institutions. And here's the deal. We just have one aspect that we're going to be talking about right now, but it is very, very, very important. Subtitle: The ubiquity of the corporate takeover of America does not end with mom and pop stores. It is the injection of their tentacles into our infrastructure, education, and everything else. And it's going to be interesting what we're going to talk about today because, you know, it covers that educational part, but it's a hell of a lot more. So, folks, here's the deal. Corporations are trying to insert themselves into every aspect of our life. The reality is they're attempting to snuff out our control and governance. They do not want we the people to run the country. They want we the corporations to be the masters. Remember, controlled by the corporation means controlled by the elite, a few corporate shareholders. Today, we discuss a local story that is not unique to Houston. In fact, I'm pretty sure both of our guests are going to give us examples of other places where this has occurred as well. So what do we have for you today here in Houston, Texas? We have Sarah Terrell, founder of kindergiveitback.org. And guess what? Did you notice I already one time gave the address of that website that we want everybody to listen to go to, kindergiveitback.org. And along with her is her, her partner in crime, Anne-Alise Eagleton. They are the guests of our show today, and we are so happy to have you. So, Sarah, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, this thing that I'm involved in is with HSPVA, the High School for Performing and Visual Arts.
Before that, Sarah, I don't want Sarah. I don't want to know what you're doing yet. I just want to know a little bit about you first.
Well, I'm a mom of a student at HSPVA, and that's how I got interested in this subject. So I have not actually been a big activist before this. I've been on another radio show, and I was introduced as an activist, and I thought, wow, okay, new title for me.
Right.
But
you are an activist.
Yeah, because of this. I've
because
become
of
one.
this. Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. So great. Anne, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a parent, and as soon as my son started attending HISD, I started volunteering. And I think just once you start volunteering in the schools, you really get an education about what is going on. And I became involved just through volunteering and seeing what's going on, and was involved with HISD, but due to family circumstance kind of backed off, and now I'm kind of back in it. Sarah's definitely dragged me back into
you're
it,
now,
both feet, and yes, now
you're both activists now.
Yeah,
so you are an activist,
in.
Anne. You're an activist. Embrace the title.
Yes, I guess I will embrace
because that is what we want out of our citizenry now, especially now, folks. What you've got to have is you have to have activist citizens that are going out there and taking what's theirs and making sure that we're not taking advantage of them. I said that nicely because I have two women in the studio. But anyhow, they will discuss a billionaire seemingly coercive purchase of the naming rights of a new school funded 95% by the taxpayer. And I'm very sure they're going to have a whole lot to expand on that. So, folks, this is going to be a great show. And for those of you that are listening outside of the state of Texas, outside of Houston, remember, this applies to you as well. So this is not this is a local story that has national implications. And these women are going to tell us about those as well. So folks, before I get busy with the program, I want to remind all of our listeners that KPFT is a bastion of intelligent voices and programs. As a political activist myself, my favorites are Think Wing Radio with
Mike Honig on Mondays at 2 p.m.
And of course we have Open Journal with whom?
Dwayne Bradley and crew on Mondays at 6 p.m.
And you know, we're talking about jazz, Latino, Afro-Cuban, Latin jazz at its very best, hosted by
Juan Flores on Tuesdays at noon.
And then we have Generation Radio, a weekly radio program featuring an eclectic mix of Asian underground Bhangra, Bollywood funk, indie, Rai, where ancient sounds meet what?
Future Beats.
What time?
Thursdays at noon to 2 p.m.
Okay, I don't remember this, but I think we also have Really, but Not Really. And that is a hip hop and R&B parody show on
Thursdays at 10 p.m. with Rosemont and Marcel Monroe.
And I need your help again because I still haven't updated my stuff about the show right after mine.
Right after this is Border Radio with Susan Darrow at 4 p.m. to 6.
And I want to, tomorrow we are going to have the human, what is it called again?
The Human Condition at 3 p.m.
And who is the star of that show again?
Wow, star. No,
yeah.
There's no star of that show. But it's hosted by, I believe, it says Don.
And who's Don again?
I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know that.
That is Mr. Humble there. You know what I mean? That is going to be the host of the show. Okay.
It's not a permanent show.
That's not the point. That's not the point.
Make it sound like it, and then I get in trouble.
You're not going to get in trouble here. Don, we can't wait to hear you, Don. Well, we've heard you before, but we know you're darn good at what you do. But anyhow, folks, check out our full schedule at kpft.org, where you can find programming from music to politics to medicine to the eclectic. KPFT is listener-supported public community radio station. So please remember that if you like what you hear, visit where?
kpft.org/donate.
And ensure we remain a strong, viable community radio station that provides news, programming, and information like we're going to have with these two wonderful lady activists. Not influenced by whom?
The corporatocracy.
Of course not influenced by the corporatocracy. Folks, let me tell you, go ahead and go to Facebook and go to Politics Done Right with Egberto Willies and like that page. And likewise, go ahead and follow Egberto Willies on Twitter. We have a lot to bring to you, and we'll continue to have a lot to bring to you. My dear women, you are here today to talk about the takeover of one of the most important schools in Houston's name. It was bought. So let me ask you, why are you so pissed about the change of a name of a school?
Well, it's not just any school. The High School for Performing and Visual Arts is our only public arts magnet fine arts school in Houston. It's one of our very first and most successful examples of a specialty school. And it has a very strong reputation. It's nationally recognized, and it's a beloved cultural institution here in Houston. So from a purely financial standpoint, that name has a lot of monetary value. It's a recognized brand. And as it so happens, HISD is building a new building for HSPVA downtown in the heart of downtown near Discovery Green. It's going to be a really cool, really beautiful building with a lot of theaters and spaces. And they have apparently sold the name of the school in connection with the building of that new building. The building is being paid for 95% by taxpayers and 5% through this gift donation naming rights sale to Nancy and Richard Kinder and their corporation, the Kinder Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a surprise thing. Suddenly they had this offer, and it was a done deal, and suddenly it had been voted on, and now it's gone. But just from a financial standpoint, these brand names are really valuable. And so this is kind of like if Disneyland decided to change its name to Kinder Disneyland because the Kinders bought them a new ride at the park.
Let me ask Anne something here. Anne, she's saying that it's 95 versus 5, but 5% at sometimes can be a lot of money. What kind of money are we talking about here?
Well, my initial outrage, or why I was upset about it, there's the money aspect, which HISD did get ripped off,
right?
Because naming rights tend to go for a lot more money. But for me, there's also just a kind of an ethical, philosophical issue of should an arts high school be named after a billionaire? What's the message we're sending the young kids, the young artists that are just getting started, are just developing? What are we saying to them? Are we saying we support you, or are we subtly telling them you're less than?
Mm-hmm.
Billionaires are what matter. See, it's a billionaire who had to come save you and who's always going to take care of you. I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, you just segued into something that we actually discussed, and around the table last week. Because when you're saying it's a billionaire that saved the building of the school, or allowed that school to be built, I think you have a hell of a lot of other information that says that simply is not true.
Well, that is the narrative that was put forth.
So let's do it.
But right,
Yeah.
But that's the narrative. But what I'm trying to say is when we put a name on somebody's name on a building, especially when they're alive,
right?
Are we taking on their identity?
Mm-hmm.
We never had a chance as a community to discuss who the Kinders are. Are their values now transferring onto the school?
Mm-hmm.
They're big contributors to Governor Abbott.
Mm-hmm.
Are Governor Abbott's beliefs, do they fit within the culture of HSPVA?
Do they?
I don't think they do. They're not, HSPVA has a long history of being a place where gay, transgendered students can go and they can be themselves. I don't recall Governor Abbott being open to that community. In fact, quite the opposite. So these are conversations that the community never got to have.
So there are two conversations, right? There's a conversation about the school being ripped off, and then there's a conversation about whether the name that it's adopting is worthy of what the institution stands for. Is that correct?
Or any name, really.
Okay.
And it's interesting about the Kinders. People have asked me, well, did they go to HSPVA? Did one of their children go to HSPVA? No and no. We're basically naming the school for the Kinders in recognition of the fact that they have more money than the rest of us.
I want to interrupt you for a second. I'm sorry for doing this, but for the audience at large, I made a huge mistake in not first asking you explain to folks what exactly is HSPVA.
HSPVA is the High School for Performing and Visual Arts. It's a 47-year-old school. It's, like I said earlier, it's really a cultural icon here in Houston. It's very beloved. It's one of a kind. It's tremendously successful, particularly when you see how many well-known graduates it's produced over the years. And probably the biggest name that people name drop is Beyonce. She actually went there for a short time. She didn't graduate. But we have a lot of other pretty well-known actors, jazz musicians of all stripe, artists who graduated from HSPVA, and lesser-known ones that really make up the fabric of the art community here in Houston, or often do return to be part of Houston and give back. So it's a really important, nurturing nucleus here in Houston. Mm-hmm. So for them to take that name is they're not just getting their name on a glitzy building downtown in a very prominent spot on a brand new building. They're also getting the reputation of this school, and so henceforth, when someone graduates and makes good or becomes famous, then they're a graduate of Kinder High School. So it's kind of, having their name on it is a self-perpetuating, never-ending advertisement for the Kinders, Nancy and Richard Kinder, for their pipeline company that is a source of all their wealth, has their name on it, Kinder Morgan Corporation, Kinder Morgan Inc. And of course their foundation, which was the conduit for this, the Kinder Foundation. So it's a three-way advertisement for all things Kinder.
Let's do a walkthrough now, because I think this is what's important, to show where the public didn't have an input or sufficient or proper input into how this complete event took place. Now, when you gave me the story and I went to your website, and your website is
kindergiveitback.org.
Kindergiveitback.org. When I went to your website and studied some of what's on there, the storyline behind how this school came to adopt the name of this billionaire is kind of windy, shady, and all the above. Why don't you go through, and I'll kind of tell you, let's see how this started.
Okay, I don't think we want to say this school came to accept the name. I think what happened was,
that's why I asked
the
you.
name was kind of rammed down the throat of the school community by a very tiny group of people with an agenda, and the method they used was to gain acceptance on the HISD school board. So
tell us the story.
Okay, so they were building this school, and the school cost $88 million. They decided that the school district said, we can't afford to have the super high-end equipment in the theaters. We're going to give you plain vanilla equipment. So that set up an opportunity for a capital campaign for this little outfit called HSPVA Friends, which has also been around for a long time, has always raised money to supplement whatever was going on at the school. And they had been planning this capital campaign for years, ever since the plans for the new school were on the books. So they came in and they said, okay, we want to raise some money to provide this theater equipment. So they went out, and totally on the side and totally in secret, they went to their deepest pockets donors, which were Richard and Nancy Kinder, and they wrote a contract. It's a 14-page, very tight, very commercial contract that gives the Kinders perpetual naming rights to the school, even if it's torn down, rebuilt in another location forever, in exchange for $7.5 million.
One of the things that I like about your website, whose name is
kindergiveitback.org,
is that it, in very much detail, you have all this information there, so you can actually see that contract as well. So it's the reason we're saying that, folks, is, as you know, on Politics Done Right at KPFT, what we try to do is give you valid information. These are not just crackpots coming here that are mad that a name is getting changed. All this is documented information from these women and your allies. So let's go ahead and continue.
So they have this contract. It's written. It's signed by Nancy Kinder and by the chairman of the board of HSPVA Friends, who's basically the facilitator and creator of this whole situation. They plop it down at HISD, and basically they say, hurry up. You don't have to read every word. Just vote on it and sign it. And they had enough pull, and they were able to do enough of a surprise, I want to use the word attack, maybe that's over the top, but a surprise attack on the public, on the board of trustees,
What do you call
everybody.
an attack?
Well, because they were ambushing to get this name, and they knew that there was potentially going to be pushback, particularly from the alumni community, but also current parents and taxpayers and people on the board who didn't want to sell school names. This had never been done before. So they managed to get this contract. They plopped it down at HISD. It's a fully formed baby that's already been delivered. Just sign here. And they did manage to rush it through. The public found out about this on October the 7th. The vote to accept the contract was October 13th. So there was no opportunity really for the public to have any input to this decision.
And then did you say that when you said that the public didn't have any right to the decision, did you also say that there were a few of the board members that didn't go along with it?
Well, an interesting part of this is that in the spring of 2016, there was the renamings for the Confederate named schools.
Right.
So we'd already had a big hullabaloo surrounding school naming. So I think they knew that if they opened it up, it could present some fireworks if you really did open it up to the public, because it turns out people have opinions about school names. So they did, I think there was reasons to
be scared about it. Yeah.
But part of this had to do with there were problems in the bond fund, which is what finances these new school buildings, which is separate than the operating budgets for schools. So the trustees actually didn't really know how much money they had available. So that was part of the
question
attack.
Who determines how much money they really? Why didn't the trustees know how much money they really had?
Well, in the bond department, we had sort of a little bit of a perfect storm of construction costs were rising very rapidly. So the original bond was coming up short. They had to get some extra funding, but as these contracts were going out for new schools, they were finding they didn't have enough money. So the numbers were constantly changing, and the trustees I don't think were able to keep up with when the numbers were going up, going down. So kind of last time they had checked in on the bond department, they didn't have enough money.
Or not enough for
HSPVA.
I just want to make sure people understand. The school would have been fully functional. It's going to be amazing with or without the kinder money. They didn't have enough money for state-of-the-art theater equipment.
They would have had the vanilla type equipment that would have worked just fine.
And they could have used anything from the old school, and a lot of that equipment is movable and reusable.
And they could have had Robert De Niro could have donated something as well.
Right, and I think something I want to say just on the side real quick is that the way this went down, nobody in the public knew that there was any shortfall whatsoever. The trustees were surprised to be told there was a shortfall. So what you had was a tiny, tiny group, a couple of people at HSPVA Friends and Richard and Nancy Kinder, and a very few people inside HISD administration decided that there was only one solution for this perceived shortfall, and that is that we should sell the name. There was nothing else proposed, no other less drastic measures, no creative thinking, nothing. Just these people decided for all of us that there's only one solution here. We're going to have to sell this name.
Well, and what's even more interesting is the Bond Oversight Committee, the people who are charged with taking care of the bond money, they met 10 days after the naming, and they were surprised by it. And in fact, they were concerned that selling of this name made them look chintzy. They were kind of like, wait, I mean, we funded that school. This makes us look bad. And I think what's most upsetting is if you go through the bond minutes, the money was there. Had HSPVA just waited.
Explain. How could the bond money been there and not been
turned
there?
out there was just a spike in construction costs that eventually came down. And so in this April of 2017, they redistributed the money that they had taken out of the new school. So
Out of their budget.
out of their budget. So PVA originally was going to get this fancy equipment, but construction costs they had to minimize. So they were going to get plain vanilla equipment. Well, in April, all those schools that cut back got all their stuff back,
And that all their cutbacks were
all their
restored.
cutbacks were restored
Because they found, let me put that in quotes, they
Found,
they
right.
quote found, unquote, found $100 million of cost savings throughout this $2 billion
Who
bond
found
program.
$100 million?
Within the bond fund, which was $2 billion. So you
Right.
can understand how $100 million might be
It's only
sloshing
5%.
around.
That's 5%.
Right. And they're building 28 high schools with that bond fund and a bunch of elementaries and middles. So yeah, there's a lot of sloshing around in those numbers. There's a lot of estimating and in the end they totally had the money to give HSPVA even the high end
Okay,
equipment.
let's back up here.
But it was too late.
Actually, from your website, I learned it's not too late if one fights, but we'll go there in a little bit. $100 million found. How much is the kinder gift?
It's two numbers. It's 5 million and it's 7.5 million.
Let's
so
assume it's 7.5 million.
It's 7.5 in total. Only 5 million of that was needed for the high end equipment.
But you found $100 million.
Right. Which they spent now.
No, but-
definitely.
No,
They
but
definitely found a way to spend
well,
that.
actually, they're in the red, right? Right now, they're trying to find money to lay off teachers and all that.
That's
kind
a
of
different
That-
pot of money. That's
right.
operating
That's operating
the schools.
expenses. Yeah,
This is
right.
the
This
bond
capital.
funds.
Yeah.
This is capital.
This
correct.
is you're correct. You're correct. This is capital expenditures. Now, here's my question. If I understand what I read from your website, and the website's name again is?
Kindergiveitback.org.
If I remember correctly, what I read at your website is that money was found just a few days after the contract was signed.
It was, if you read those bond minutes, there is the beginning of the talk that construction costs are coming down and it looks like we're going to have extra money. But the bond department had been undergoing some pretty bad publicity. So they, in their minds, were thinking, hey, here's an opportunity for us to look good. We'll keep the money for ourselves and say, hey, we came in under budget. So they weren't exactly running out to the trustees to say, hey, we've got some extra money here. Don't sell any school
We're
names.
talking about $100 million. That's
Right.
5%.
Right. And later on, because they do have an oversight committee and it includes actual real citizens, their scheme of coming in under budget was overridden and
Right.
the oversight committee said, among other things, the first thing you need to do is restore the items that were cut from the schools that had to take cuts to their construction budgets. And then even after that, there was money left over. So they were able to add some features to some schools that had just, for instance, a high school that wanted a pool eventually
get a
got
pool.
the pool.
Okay, so what we're seeing here is a billionaire comes, buys a name, but he not only buys the name of the school, but he buys the name of the school in perpetuity, number one, which means forever that school would have the name Kinder on it. But secondly, even if that school is torn down and placed somewhere else and built, that school's name is Kinder.
Correct.
I don't think any contract has ever been signed that type of contract that has given away the taxpayer's asset for so little.
I don't think it's not normal from a standpoint of a private entity or from, as a comparison, say, a public university, U of H or UT or somebody would not have given away the institutional name. You don't see the
entire institution.
Right. You don't see Tillman Fertitta giving a basketball arena to U of H and saying, now you're going to be called Fertitta University of Houston. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
Nobody else is as ignorant and inexperienced about naming rights as to give away the name of the institution itself. It's just not done because it's kind of the goose that lays the golden egg. It's your identity.
Nobody is that ignorant. Were people paid off?
No, I don't think so, but I think our trustees were surprised. 6 out of 9 of them stated publicly that they had never heard of this contract until it arrived, for a vote,
but you're
which
saying
is
that
ridiculous. And they had no time, and they had never sold a name before. So naming rights is not an area that they knew anything about.
But you're telling me that 7 out of 9 trustees voted to give away the name of one of their schools in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to me like none of those, anybody who does that doesn't belong on the board.
We thought it was appalling.
It was.
And it was very coercive.
Because that is a sale of a public asset to a private entity.
And it's so interesting that you say that, because throughout the time that I've been trying to publicize our petition and our website and the things we've been doing, we keep calling it a sale of naming rights. And the people at HSPVA Friends and the people who advocate for them, no, it's a donation. It's a gift.
No.
The name is a big thank you.
No.
And you read that 14-page contract, totally commercial. You cannot say that it's anything but a sale of the very valuable intellectual property that we taxpayers own.
No, it's a donation of an asset. There's no doubt about it.
Donation of an asset.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right.
Now,
Here's the thing. You have an example. I don't know if it's you, Anne or Sarah, that about a school in maybe Pennsylvania that has that actually tried this kind of crap, and it was found out, and the guy had to run with his tail between his leg or something like that.
Not that bad, but it is a really interesting story. Steve Schwartzman, who's a very wealthy billionaire hedge fund manager, I think a lot of people know that name. He's really a big deal. He wanted to give money, and did give money, $25 million to his high school in Abington, Pennsylvania. Now, he wanted it named after him, but they kept that under wraps. And so they just made this announcement. He signed a deal with the board, and they made an announcement, this wonderful gift, $25 million. But they wouldn't show the contract. And so eventually the newspapers, in a short time, about a few weeks, the newspapers got the contract through Freedom of Information request. And lo and behold, he wasn't just asking that the high school be named for him. He had buildings named for his friends on the track team. He had other buildings named for his brothers. He had a curriculum requirement that everybody was going to have to learn to do computer coding. That's my phone. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
It was really excessive. And so when this was published in the newspaper, the whole town, and I think they only have one high school,
Mm-hmm.
so they just went crazy on the school board. And not only did Schwartzman back down, but the school board backed down as well. And this was just recently. This was just in March of 2018.
I want a little soliloquy here. Let me tell you something, folks. For those of you that are listening to this program, for those of you that have listened to what Anne and Sarah just had to say, this is not. Right now we're talking about schools. Okay, we're talking about HISD having sold one of their assets in perpetuity. Actually, if you sold it, it's gone. So they sold an asset belonging to all Houstonians. Every taxpayer in Houston who pays into the Houston Independent School District, you sold that HSPVA name to a private corporation who is going to be able to use it as a propaganda engine in perpetuity. If that school is torn down and you have to spend more millions to rebuild it, Kinder doesn't have to pay a penny. And their name goes on it again. You paid already $95 million.
95%.
You already paid 95% of the bill of what did the school cost?
Well, the school costs $88 million to HISD.
Right.
And HISD also owns a $19 million block of land downtown So we own it, we taxpayers, and we're contributing that as well. So the total bill is $111 million provided by taxpayers.
So as Sarah has just explained, we have sold $110 million asset, the naming of that asset, for $7.5 million. And guess what? If they rebuild and we have to spend another $100 million to build another school, they spend nothing and keeps the name. Folks, these women are heroes. No. I'm not kidding about this. There are a whole lot of things like this that happen in this community, in this country, in this town, in this state. We are building freeways and put in the commons and land that belongs to all of us. And folks, listen up to what I'm saying now, because you may listen to what these women had to say and not understand the implications of the private industry, the private sector in what's going on in this country when they're taking over your commons. We have freeways that are built now. All of us pay taxes to build highways. But now the politicians sell us out. How do they do it? They build toll roads. And then they get private companies to build and charge for these toll roads. I'm not changing the subject. I just want to show folks what's going on here. Build a toll, and guess who pays? We pay another tax, because every time you pay $1 or $2, $3, $4 for that toll, you're paying into the pocket of a private company who the politicians sold out for you, claiming that they're saving you taxes by just having this other company build it. It's a lie. You pay. And they get to pocket. These women are telling me that there wasn't kickbacks that they know about. That's what you guys say. I'm going to tell you something. Maybe you should go look, you know. But here's the deal, folks. We have to acknowledge what the private, not the private enterprise, I love private enterprise, what the corporatocracy is doing to our society at this point in time. Okay, we have to understand that. And if we don't understand that, we deserve exactly what we get. It's not only about highways, it's about airports. And every time you hear the word that the government wants to privatize something, that the government wants to go ahead and sell some public land to a private entity, remember, there's only one person getting, there's only one group getting screwed, and that's you. Remember that. Don't ever forget it, and don't let them lie to you about exactly what's happening. But I'm not going to, I'll digress from my soliloquy to start asking these women, how are we going to resolve this issue? How are you going to create the necessary fight to make sure that this asset isn't given away as it has been?
Well, it is a done deal, but it is a signed deal, and it will not, the name will not officially change until they occupy the new building in January 2019. So even although all this happened in October 2016, I always felt like, hey, I have a window of time where I can see if I can try and walk it back. My thing was, I thought that because the Kinders had done this in the name of philanthropy, and it was always, you know, from their side and HSPVA Friends side being called a donation and a gift, that I could maybe just nudge them. And my thought was, I hope that to be able to appeal to them as corporate, not corporate, but as leading citizens, community leaders, and people who, you know, are very proud of their standing as the leading philanthropic king and queen of Houston, as it were. And really, I felt like, come on, you can set a better precedent than this. I mean, the Kinders are giving, let me just little side digression. They're giving $50 million to the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, where Mr. Kinder is on the board. For $50 million, they are getting a building named after them. Now, it may be a bit as a building the exact same size as HSPVA. It's 175,000 square feet. Just coincidentally, they're both that same size. But let's say that building, it is a really fancy building architecturally. Let's say it's twice as expensive. It's a $200 million building. They're giving 25% to get their name on the building, and they are not asking the museum to change its name to the Kinder Museum of Art. So
I'm curious, what is the name that they're changing it to?
it's still the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, and it's called the Rich and Nancy Kinder Gallery.
There's just a gallery within
Yes.
the museum that they get in.
And it is a beautiful single standing building, but they did not get the identity
of
of the museum. And they're also giving something that's probably 25% of the cost. And obviously that doesn't compare at all to how they treated their fellow citizens via the school board trustees, who admittedly were easy prey for them, and took the identity of the institution for about 5%. I mean, it's crazy. So my thing was,
one last question. I need to interrupt again. Did they also get that name in perpetuity with the Museum of Fine Arts?
We don't know. The Museum of Fine Arts is private, so you can't do a public information request and get the contract. So we don't know.
Okay.
But anyway, so these are some of the circumstances. And one more thing I just want to add to it that I felt also, didn't reflect positively on the Kinders. They had expected this to go swimmingly. We have a lot of public information requests, shook loose some very interesting documents about the build up to this, including the strategy memo that forecast that they would have a unanimous vote. So they thought it was going to be very smooth sailing, and then it wasn't. So on the last day of the vote, the president of the board actually said, I think I'm going to table this. I think I'm going to take it off the agenda. It's just a little too controversial to decide on so quickly. Well, the Kinders announced in the newspaper, the offer expires today, which is a very careful way of saying, look, take it or leave it. If you don't vote, you're not going to get this donation, and you'll look like you turned down $7.5 million free dollars. We'll spin it that way for sure. And so, this is kind of very coercive. It's coercive. Yes. It was an ultimatum. It's the kind of thing that I don't think any one of us could imagine Richard Kinder doing that to his fellows on the board of trustees of the museum. Well, it just wouldn't happen.
It's interesting because Don I don't know if you saw what Don just put out there, how big these are huge donors. I mean, their name, the amount of philanthropy that they do is quite a bit. And you wonder now, with the way that the taxpayers were treated for that donation, if that is the same kind of treatment that they give to these other private entities that they support. And I think you've proven, well, at least with this $50 million donation, they were very circumspect in the way they, the way they were treated by both the museum and otherwise, such that they only got what they deserved as far as naming, et cetera, et cetera.
They got something closer to an industry norm. Naming rights are really an industry, and there is a norm. But what they got from the HISD board was way beyond the norm. Now, so to get back to my story, the reason I put all that in was I really felt that if I could bring all this to light, and then just sort of, ask the Kinders, look, is it possible there was some mess up here? Can we have a do-over?
I know you're going there, but I have what I consider something that I'm not a lawyer. Any one of your lawyers?
No.
Okay. Aren't there some laws that if somebody is if a public official is duped into signing some kind of a contract, that can actually be overturned? And have you ever explored that at all?
No, I haven't.
In other words, coerced into a contract, which everything that you've said so far tells me that they were coerced into this contract. I mean, it was like almost you had a whole bunch of know-nothings that signed. It's pretty much know-nothings. And I'm sorry for you board members who agreed with this. Who are the board members? Let's give kudos to the board members who didn't agree to this. Who are they?
Jolanda Jones and Diana Davila. And they're both still on the board.
Okay, you heard that, folks? Jolanda Jones and
Diana
Davila.
Davila, yeah.
Look. Everybody else who signed that contract must be considered know-nothings, because how do you sign a contract that gives away an asset in perpetuity? So now, again, I come back to you and ask you an important question. And that question is, if something is done in bad faith in that regards, aren't there legal recourses?
I'm not sure, but I will say this. They could have voted. 2 people voted against it. 2 people had adequate time to reflect on it and think about it and decide no. 7 people said, they basically buckled to a political and financial threat. One of the ways that was put to them was, hey, this is a whole new source of funding, naming rights. You don't want to mess it up on the very first transaction. And if you disrespect the Kinders in this transaction, then you're cutting off this whole new source of funding before it even gets started. Their wealthy friends and people like them will never be willing to buy any names from you, no matter how great they are or how little you want to sell them for.
Did that work for you in high school or elementary school? I don't know. It didn't work for me. I remember people doing that to me, and it never worked. Did it work for you?
Well, it worked for them. That's the point. It was a political argument, and it worked.
Right, so, but I mean, they haven't sold another name. So it's not like we had a stampede of Houston's finest saying, hey, we want to buy all these things and we've got all this money the money truck never rolled up to the White building.
No, it didn't. As
many of the trustees said it would. And
this is going to be a big door opener.
You just made a mention. Tell us a little bit about that real quickly.
Well, there were a few trustees. There's Harvin Moore, who's no longer on the board. He actually had dinner with the Kinders before the vote. So you could certainly say that that certainly would be ethically questionable to be dining with them just prior to a vote. Usually there's kind of blackout periods. But he was excited to be doing this. This was something... so that was kind of a weird concept to some of them. They saw that as being a good thing to sell naming rights, as opposed to me, I see it as a sign of failure. Like, you're not managing your money well enough.
Right.
That seems like such a desperado move.
It is.
I think it's not necessarily. If you want to sell the name of a stadium to a PepsiCo or something, and you put a 10-year limit
that's private.
on it.
That's private.
Well, no, they do this with football stadiums.
Right, but that's a 10-year. That's like
right.
For a stadium.
There's a place in which it's not desperate. It's
another stream of income.
Right.
It's another stream of
but
income.
They haven't done that.
That's not
Delmar
what they did.
Fieldhouse is still named after
our lines are starting to light up. So before
I need to talk about the petition.
I got that.
Because I didn't get to
I got that. Here's what I want to do. Before I go, I'm going to ask you to sort of wrap it up with the petition quickly.
Explain that.
Yeah.
Explain that. Yeah.
And then I'll go to the phone. So go ahead.
So you had asked me, what am I doing to push back against this? So taking all that into account, basically the way the Kinders did it, what they got, it was way over the top. I wanted to say, look, guys, I think Kinders, can we nudge you into a little better deal here? Why can't I just say, hey, we've got a petition, we've got people here that have signed it, just asking you respectfully, please give back the name and take a theater name instead. There's no reason why you can't get some kind of recognition, a good one, for that amount of money. But to take the institution itself was just too much. So we did this petition and we circulated it among the alumni. In short order, 3 weeks, it had 650 signatures. And by the way, if you want to sign it, go to change.org and search Kinder Foundation in their search bar, and you'll find it very quickly.
But you also have a direct link to your site to it.
And if you go to kindergiveitback.org, there are lots of links to, we call it the appeal, because we wanted to be very respectful of Kinders. We were just appealing to you, to kind of do the right thing here. Just because you can get a whole school for $7.5 million doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do, and that's what we were trying to impress on them.
Before you go, let me tell you, I'm happy that is what you want to do, but I hope you have a second plan as well, because maybe you need to have a bunch of mothers who have their kids out there in front of whatever the institution is. But we'll talk about that. Continue, please.
That would be fantastic.
Yes.
So you might ask me, well, did that work? We dropped off the petition after it had 650 signatures. Did that work? Yes, it did, in a sense. So the Kinders, I think they were quite surprised by it. They didn't know this was coming. It was actually 6 months later. By now it's April of 2017. And they did not answer us. They have not, no matter how many times I write them, call them, they never will speak to me directly. So they wrote to the head of HISD, Superintendent Carranza at the time, and they said, hey, look, this is negative controversy. We're not happy with that. We would be willing to rescind the naming rights provision of the contract and take our name off the school, but still give you the money. So
Sure they would, right?
no, that's what their letter says.
I know, but you understand what that means, right?
Well, the problem with it is, and I noticed this immediately, it is another kind of all or nothing, take it or leave it proposition. So basically what they told the school board is, you can have our money and give us no recognition at all, or you can leave the deal as it is and we get the name. And of course, it was kind of intended, I guess, now, since they never followed up with any kind of reasonable compromise like, hey, we'll take a theater name, which really would have gained traction everywhere in the community, on the school board. They would not offer the compromise. It was just another all or nothing deal. The school boards never even acknowledged the letter. So that's worked out really well for the kinders. So they pretend like they're willing to give it back, but
they really don't want. But anyhow, let's go to Walker and see what Walter? Yeah. Come on in, Walker. You're in.
Hey, guys. Very interesting. Hey, John O'Quinn gave stuff to the law school and to the medical center, and he demanded certain things. It was a big problem. But listen, on this school deal, I don't think there is such a thing legally as giving anything in property in perpetuity. You've got your 21 years plus a life. That's as long as you can control your property. And but I tell you what, I think y'all right on. But let me tell you, money speaks.
It does, and
shouldn't have spoken that loud.
Money speaks, and I guess that's in Houston. It speaks louder than anything else because basically we're telling the world we don't care about our cultural history is. We don't care how the school was built. We don't. We're just going to name it for the nearest billionaire.
Well,
and that's kind of who we are.
Good luck to you guys. I don't know. Have you checked it? Do you know the legal thing? Can this deed or whatever it is, this is maybe void as a matter of public policy? Well, I'm not sure about that. It's been a long time since I've been.
I think they need
anything property-wise, but also. I think it's wrong. Just name a building. I mean, name a little gallery over there, but don't name the whole school.
Exactly.
It's gross.
Thank you, Walter. Walter, thank you so kindly. Okay, let's go to Scott real quickly. Scott, come on in.
Hi. I shopped today at Target. I started shopping at Target some years ago because I liked their transgender policy. And the American Family Association is attempting a boycott. I got a few postings from AFA on Facebook. I posted my comments. I saw some other comments that agreed with me. And I certainly still get postings from Target, and I tell them. And
is that relevant to the topic today, Scott?
That don't like the transgender policy. They say they're not taking their business; they're taking their business elsewhere, and I'm taking my business there.
Good. Thank you. Is there anything that you want to say about HSPVA real quickly, Scott?
And if I were a propagandist for AFA, I could say that corporations have too much power. Corporations like Target, they want to force women to share restrooms with men.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, my friend. Let's go to Cheryl. Come on in, Cheryl.
Hey, I know you already said this, but it went so fast I missed what you said. Something about they said don't use our name at all would be something. Can you please reiterate that? And then have one more quick question.
Yes. So, in response to our petition, which now has 1,100 signatures, it had about 650 when we dropped it off at the Kinder Foundation. Mr. Kinder wrote a letter to HISD saying that the Kinders were willing to rescind the naming rights provision of the contract and still give the money, but because they did not offer, a compromise, like, okay, we'll take a theater name instead. The effect of their letter was an offer to the school district. You have two choices here. You can take our money and give us no recognition at all, or you can leave the deal alone. You keep our money and we get the name. So it was very, again, very
passive aggressive, but
it's very passive aggressive. I love that. Yes.
Yeah, but so what? Call them on their bluff. Cool, great, thanks. It's still HP.
Okay, ask her next question.
Same,
ask her next question,
yeah.
ma'am.
Okay, but well, now I got a second question too. I just real quick, I wanted to know if they were any affiliation with the Kinder Egg people, Fortunes.
No, they're not. They're Kinder
Okay.
Morgan, the giant,
Okay.
the giant gas
and
pipeline.
Are you guys pressuring? Last question. Are you guys also pressuring the school board, because it appears that they now have the power to just say, "Great, thanks, we will take you up on your offer and not recognize you. Sorry, you don't want a theater named after you. If you change your mind, we'd love to give you that."
We've done our best. We've written, we've spoken, I've campaigned for people on this, and unfortunately it takes 6 to change it. And the Kinders and HSPVA friends are much more directly connected to the board than we are. And that's just power politics.
I just think that as much effort as you're putting on this, and and you're getting lots more signatures as we speak. I signed and the number was going up on your site as I signed it.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so kindly,
Share
Sarah.
it.
Can you also please put the same pressure on the school board? Because there's other people who know the school board that might be able to affect some change and do those
Cheryl, I
things.
got to go, but thank you so kindly
tried.
for calling,
I'm done.
Cheryl. Thank you so kindly. Okay, let's go. Johnny, come on in.
Yeah, how about the John Lennon School of Drama? I'm sure Yoko wouldn't mind. He donates lots of causes.
He's a great guy.
Allowing these big polluting industries who are going to be in business for at least another 2 decades to play with the minds of young school children. That should be immoral, if not illegal.
You know, Johnny, and this is what these two women are fighting for. It's Anne?
And by the way, I've got a pipeline just 3 doors down. It says Kinder Morgan on it. If they want to give away their wealth, do it anonymously. That's what Christ would do.
Okay, Anne, you want to add to that?
I mean, it's you can't help but separate the corporation from the man. So it isn't
Right, and our students
appropriate.
are stuck with basically a pipeline name on their diploma from
Right.
now.
And
starting
it's
starting in 2019, their diploma doesn't say HSPVA, which has always been so valuable to the alumni for decades into their life, and now it will say Kinder.
Brother MOD, last question.
I was just thinking that it's obvious there's some kind of insider communication going on. The guy had dinner before he quit, and he got 6 out of 9 folks voting for it. So that's just corruption.
Yes, yeah, I think
corruption.
I think Anne and Sarah would agree with you, right, Sarah? And
Well,
Anne?
one thing we didn't discuss is the attorney that serves the board of trustees has connections.
Okay, say it
to
in
HSPVA friends.
Say that in about 30 seconds.
The attorney that serves the board of trustees is also connected to HSPVA friends, so he was working
both sides of
many
the
sides of the deal.
And his name is David Thompson.
Okay, folks, look, you've heard what these women had to say about HSPVA, and let me tell you, you need to go to their website to really get the full rundown, because we can't do all of this in 1 hour. So why don't you give them the website one more time?
KinderGiveItBack.org.
KinderGiveItBack.org. I got 30 seconds. Folks, let me tell you, as you can see, this is not just a local story. Yes, it is. It is a local story for us, but it's something that's going on throughout the country. We want to thank Sarah and Anne for being here. You are great activists in this city. Get tougher.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So, folks, this is Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willies, and we are out.
Thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. You can personally reach me by sending an email to egberto@politicsdoneright.com. Remember, Egberto is spelled E-G-B-E-R-T-O. Change starts with you. 90.1 KPFT gives you information not tainted by corporate interest. Please visit kpft.org and contribute. Let's ensure continued access to real information and news remain available to all. Again, thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right.